For March the 25th, 2022, we talk about Tunic, Iron Lung, Necrobarista, and more. Welcome to level 407. My name is Cole Ross.
I'm Dennis Furia.
I'm Jala Prendes.
I'm Ben Merkel.
And you are listening to The Level, a podcast for people who love video games. Sorry, I had too much happening on my screen all at once, and I
made it more dramatic.
A little bit.
ADHD.
Actually, I do. Welcome, Jala. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. I forget how this show starts. I got put on a wrong foot. What you been up to, Jala?
Mostly just a lot of work. Nothing very fun. But I will tell you about something I will be doing. This Thursday, the Houston Arboretum and Nature Center, which is a local conservatory, conservation group that I am part of. They will be doing a sip and stroll, wine with like snacks and stuff, and just chilling and walking around the Arboretum in the evening. It's closed to everybody else and just for members and all of that fun stuff. And since it's outdoors, it'd be easy to distance a little bit from other people. Plus they have timed tickets. So you have,
Oh, that's nice.
That'll be good. So we'll be doing that on Thursday evening. It will be nice because all of the crazy weather came today, and we had insane storms and tornadoes ripping up people's houses on the north side and things. It was great. Jala House is fine.
Good.
All the people that Jala knows is fine. They is all fine, but I don't know about other folks. There are other folks who unfortunately were having some issues. So.
God. Houston can't catch a break.
No, and it's just going to keep being that way because climate change, and I live close to the coast. So
yeah. Blah.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yep.
Well, I hope you enjoy your time at the Arboretum. I mean, one of the best holiday parties I ever went to was at the Cincinnati Botanical Gardens. Slightly different kind of place. It was indoor instead of outdoor, but I spent less time talking to people than I did going around and looking at cool pitcher plants and, admiring the birds, giving them attention,
The best social functions, the ones where you don't have to socialize with other people.
I mean,
the ones. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Say the ones where you can stand next to someone and both go, that's something.
Yeah. I talked to people. I just wasn't near the main hub of activity. It was if somebody walks by the birds where I'm at or by the pitcher plants where I'm at, I will talk with them and engage with them, and they can move on. Yeah.
So yeah. Also, this is a very small thing. Very literally, I received in the mail today a pin for my little label pin collection of various things. It is a supreme bird of paradise, which turns itself, the male during the mating season and its mating dance turns itself into kind of like an orb of blackness with glowing blue eyes and what looks to be a mouth on the front of it. But it's not really a mouth. It's just I don't know, part of its feathers in the front just look like a big strip of a mouth, and it looks like a dark void of death, and it's very good. And there was a pin, and I bought it, and I posted it to the internet. You can see it there.
You know what it kind of looks like? Like the mouth looking part, the big blue bar. It makes it look a little bit like a PS4 controller if you look at it from top on.
Guys, we might play too many video games.
Maybe.
There's the subliminal reason why I bought the pin.
Hey, I mean, go ahead.
This bird thing, the mating ritual or whatever, is elaborate. Yes, it's got the puff ball with the feathers and blue dot eyes and whatever, but then it also it clears out a whole area and makes an elaborate array of sticks. It is a whole deal.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit on a pin though.
Dudes, am I right? And to brush off the I think we've all played too many video games. We talked about this in the green room too before we recorded. Jala shared a photo of it. We said many other things before I jumped onto the PS4 one, so that wasn't my first thought. We talked about it being a smile and a mustache, just so people don't call the county, see if they can come by and do a wellness check on us. Ben, how about you?
I've been doing pretty good. I think maybe the karma and the earth. We had good weather today instead of bad weather, so it was the first day that it's been in like the 60s.
Nice.
So I went out for a short run. It was very nice. Cool. But then it'll be cloudy and rainy for the rest of the week, so it'll be back to normal tomorrow.
Yeah.
But hopefully a taste of things to come weather-wise. So
yeah, brief reprieve. Get your head above water there for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dennis, how about you?
Yeah. So are you guys familiar with Main Event? It's like a activity arcade / bowling / laser tag.
Yes.
I am now familiar now that you have.
I'm familiar. I'm in the know. I got it.
you main the events. Yeah. So like I go there with the kids every now and again when it's dreary out and we want to be out and about doing something. Or when we just feel like bowling in arcades. It's a cool place.
Mm-hmm.
But guys, I won the main event, by which I mean I got the arcade pass card down to exactly 0 credits.
What?
Wow.
I always wind up walking away with some credits left on the card, which is like the guarantee, like, oh, we'll go back and we've got some free games anyway on the card. So, and then you wind up re-upping and it keeps you going. But I saw my shot, and we went out on skee ball.
Okay.
Skee ball,
Yeah.
which just felt classic. That felt right.
Yeah.
So we can never return.
Yeah.
No, what we got? It's one of those things where just where when you're walking and your gait lines up perfectly with the pattern in the floor or any of those things. It's just one of those things that feels oddly satisfying.
Yeah.
As when you hit exactly 0 on this target, because everything's like 7.5 credits.
Mm-hmm.
Like dog just
has to be intentional.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. So now the thing I'm not saying is we still have tickets to spend.
Oh yeah.
I'm realizing this has a lot in common with like free to play games with 6,000 different currencies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. This is exactly like the proto version of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, also similar to casinos, which basically use the cards or pay out on receipts and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that makes me feel bad about myself. So I'm gonna go with other analogies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least this you're doing something with your kids. So
yeah, it's a good time.
You're sharing the addiction. It's not all on you.
I'm making sure this is a generational family problem. No, it was a wonderful cap on their spring break. So I am.
Oh yeah.
Now officially out of a week of having all the kids at home and back to having just one of them at home during the day.
Nice.
So I'm made it through. And even with a little main event style, it was a good time.
Nice. What kind of fun center games do the kids go for? I mean, are they mostly like into ticket games, or are they into like the arcade games?
Yeah, this is the crazy thing. They go for the VR games.
Okay.
The things with the most germs is how you measure that.
Right.
But the main event that we go to has a Rabbids themed VR ride. And it's like there's a bunch of different, but they're all Rabbids themed. And so the one they did this time was like you're at a Rabbids theme park and the roller coaster goes off the rails and flies around, and so they're in the ride looking around in VR, and you can watch them on the screen above like what they're seeing, which is always fun. The thing that gets me is like the goggles are, and maybe I should have taken a cue from this, the goggles don't tighten far enough to be like securely on their heads.
Okay.
So they wind up like holding the sides of them with their hands to make sure they can see, which means they're not holding the safety bar in front of them.
That's why they have insurance. Come on.
Yeah, you want to see a 5-year-old almost topple out of machine. It is thrilling. But no, they like that one. There's also a King Kong VR ride that they like. And then they're this is I don't know what got them there, but they are really interested in the Ghostbusters arcade cabinet. And I don't know if this is something that is like a cabinet people would be familiar with, but it's like a point and shoot game with the ghost busting backpack stream things, whatever they are. And I think the game is first off, you're supposed to have 2 players, and when you activate your like special power or whatever, the cabinet actually like shoots ping pong balls at the screen. There's like a physical gimmick to it.
Oh yeah.
Except for one of the player guns is broken entirely, and neither of them actually shoot ping pong balls at any point. That's the cabinet that they keep on returning to. That's the one that grabs their attention. I don't know what got it that way or why that lodged in their minds, but that's one of the ones they get most excited about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so ticket games are peppered in there, racing games are peppered in there, but it's mostly the VR experience games and a busted Ghostbusters cabinet.
Nice. Yeah. I'm just curious because I remember what it was like when I was a kid. I always went for the arcade side of things, so I'd play like, beat 'em ups, the X-Men or Turtles game or whatever the entire time we were there, and then my brother would be over in the ticket games, and I would be really upset because he got all these tickets and got to get good stuff, and I didn't because I didn't have tickets, and it didn't.
And it's so arbitrary what does and what doesn't. Like, yeah.
And so it just ended up being like it took me a while to realize like no, that the actual experience was the was the cool thing. That's what you got instead of a mustache comb and a piece of bubble gum.
You enjoyed your time there versus felt like you were grinding and working for something within the obscure currency.
Nice. Yeah. And for me, not a whole lot. Honestly, just doing a lot of stuff out in the garage. Wanted to do stuff in the shed, get that kind of all prepared for the summer, but it's way too wet. My backyard. I need to do something about my sod. My root system is shot. It's all mud. So I've got to get somebody
get
out.
Some birch trees in there.
I got a birch tree in the back, but it's too small of a tree for too big of a yard, So yeah. Oh well, I got to.
So what's in the garage for you?
So I've been reorganizing some of the tools and trying to get the storage on point because most of it's been there. So, but I've been really since I did the bathroom updates, I've really started liking my miter saw. I have a miter saw, and so
it's the cellar door of the garage.
Yeah, no. So I wanted to make. I've got a problem. My sound bar blocks a little bit of my TV and especially blocks some of my the remote sensor. So I took some old 2x4s and I made a little platform to put my to put my TV on to raise it up. Honestly, it's just a bunch of 2x4s laid flat, but like figuring out how to affix them with screws, so it wasn't just all loose was an interesting challenge. Making it all kind of like interlock in a way, and then
nice.
It's the last coat of spray paint is drying on it now, so it's a nice espresso brown to match the top of my entertainment center, and I even got little rubber feet for it, so that'll solve a problem.
What makes me giggle, is the fact that on Twitter, Patches was like, "Jokes on Gary if Kole and Jeremy started a homeowner podcast, I would definitely be listening to that." And then I like had retweeted that, and then he commented, "Oh, I know that you would be able to guest on it too." I'm like, I've been doing nothing but remodeling crap at home. You want me to talk about cabinets? I'll tell you about cabinets.
That is beyond me.
How many syllables are in that word? Hold on. I've never heard that word with 3 syllables before.
I usually say it with 2.5. you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like there's an apostrophe in it.
I'm not you're beyond me. I have no confidence that any cabinet that I put up would stay on the wall. I would not want to put anything, I mean, even that I wanted to break inside of it. So
Yeah, I've see, although I have not been actively doing a lot of the remodeling stuff, my dad owned a remodeling business, and so
Mhm.
when I was little, especially and through my teenhood, I was doing quite a bit of remodeling as part of helping him with his business. So
Mhm.
like as soon as I was able to hold tools or carry stuff around or do whatever, like that
Yeah.
was, part of what I was doing with myself. I realized at one point when there was some construction at my college back when I was in college, uh, that the smell of wet cement brought me back to my childhood, as does the smell of sawdust,
Oh, of course, sawdust.
uh,
Yeah.
because both of those things were part and parcel of things that I was participating in
Hmm.
as a kid. So,
The
I've been doing
smell of
this for the.
cement, the sound of a person begging not to be thrown into the river.
So,
Oh,
anyway, I just had to share that because that was pertinent.
yeah.
Hmm. So, Cole, as you were sharing that story, I knew you weren't going to, but I desperately wanted you to say, I've got a miter saw. I enjoy miter saws, and I had the sound bar that didn't fit, so I took a couple inches off each side of the sound bar.
No, I wouldn't use a miter saw for that. It's far too long. I would use a rip saw or a planer to get that. Some kind of planer probably, because you can be a little bit more precise. It's not power tooled, and you can just kind of do the shaves until it fits. Yeah.
There needs to be a Willet blend for planers. Willet plane.
Just get a supersized kitchen mandolin and just go to town. That's banter. I think we got games to talk about, so I imagine we ought to go and do a regular kind of show. What with the grind, the multiplayer, and the end boss. And why don't we get started with the grind? The grind, where we talk about the games we have been playing over the past period of time or so. Jala, I believe it has been the longest since you have been on. So I will go to you, and then Dennis, you're next because you weren't on here last week.
Is that a threat?
You're next, buddy.
No, I'm just explaining how the heuristic goes. Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good to have that certainty, that heads up.
So the first game that I will talk about, I thought I had talked about it before, but I think I was just talking about it in the green room because I Googled it. I looked it up on the website a couple of times, like, okay, is this game going to pop up? Did I talk about this game? And it did not. So anyway, Necrobarista Final Pour. This is a visual novel that was developed by an Australian studio called Route 59. It was released in 2020 for Windows and iOS, and the Final Pour version was released on Switch last summer, and that's where I picked it up. The story takes place in a Melbourne cafe that is staffed by a necromancer that serves both the living and the dead. What makes it notable is that it has a 3D cinematic style rather than a 2D animation style. There was actually a dedicated cinematographer that just worked on that element for this game. It was developed in Unity. Anyway, the art style is influenced by film and anime, but it looks markedly non-Japanese, at least to me, since I've watched a ton of anime and read a ton of manga in my day back when I was deep, deep, deep in the otaku mines. So I do not actually like the art style, but the cinematic quality of the cutscenes and the story sequences are what made me want to try the game anyway, as they are different enough from every other visual novel that I've played insofar as how they're presented, I wanted to just take a stab at it and see what I thought. So, also, it's a sort of dark or supernatural horror-ish kind of theme. You got necromancers, undead people, and things combined with coffee. I felt like this was made for me by that premise, right? So some of the official reviews also mentioned the great writing and dialogue, and one of them even referenced 999. So that's what I got set up with before I got into it. Unfortunately, I played about half of it, and I didn't find it nearly as meant for me as it first appeared. First off, there's no decisions to be made at all. So it's more of a read at your own pace 3D novel rather than a visual novel video game. And I know a lot of people who don't play Vizinovs are like, well, you don't do anything in a visual novel anyway. Well, actually, yes, you do, because you do have decisions to make, and they at least nominally will change relationships with various characters or lead to branching paths or something like that. And in here, there are no branching paths. There are no changing dynamic things. There's not really anything dynamic going on. You are presented with a story. So that's the first thing where it's like, well, like I don't mind doing some reading. I don't mind watching something, with minimal interaction. I'm okay with some of that, depending on how it's presented and everything. Problem number 2, though, I'm not a particular fan of slice of lifestyle media, and that's exactly what this is.
Ooh.
It presents a bunch of quick snippets of things happening in the terminal over the course of a few days. And the terminal, which is the name of the coffee house, the place where the dead go before they move on to the afterlife, is situated in an in-between place with a physical point in the living world, but it's also, again, a stopping point for souls on their way to the afterlife. And the kind of dynamic, the gimmick of this is that the dead are only permitted to stay at the cafe for 24 hours before they're encouraged to move on. Actually, what the afterlife is never mentioned. What it is, where it is, the nature of it, does it relate to any kind of religious or, scientific stuff? They don't broach that subject.
They do the Pixar Soul approach.
I guess they just they don't dwell on the nature of it so much as coming to grips with death and grief and moving on and all of that. That's really where the heart of this is at. It's not really, the destination isn't the point, it's that journey. So but when the dead linger in that cafe for more than 24 hours, it starts to upset the balance of the universe, because they should have been moved on and they haven't yet.
Do they become caffeines?
What it does is it runs up a tab to the cafe that then has to pay off the debt. Okay. So when the game starts, the cafe is passed from the former owner to Maddie, the main character, who is a necromancer, along with several centuries worth of debt that the cafe has accrued from allowing people to hang out in the cafe longer than they're supposed to. And you're never placed directly into the perspective of any of the characters in the game, and instead you're a passive observer. And I think part of what my issue is I would have enjoyed it a lot more if there was some kind of deeper exploration of the events transpiring within a person's perspective, using their voice and their thought processes. Getting into their head a little bit more probably would have made this more engaging to me, since there's not stuff to do. But again, it's a passive audience, third person perspective. You're not actually a person that's there. You're just watching the events unfold. Slice of lifestyle. The only action that you have available to you is basically, as things are happening, you can click on highlighted words to read more commentary or information about those words. It's just keywords that pop up that are in bold. And sometimes those are jokes, it says something and it's just a quip about that particular word.
Okay.
Or whatever, he said he needed it, and then, he needed it like another hole in the head or something like that. Some kind of quip like that. Or sometimes it is, actually more information about a thing. So it just kind of varies. But by clicking on all of those highlighted words, you unlock side stories to read at the end of the chapter during a first-person exploration mode, where basically you can just wander around the environment in the cafe, and then there's a bunch of floating words that coalesce into a short story that you can read that's about some of the characters or the situations going on. and there's nothing that's voiced. So the problem that I have is that it's a lot more reading on top of the parts that are directly character interactions with cinematic images, you know? And so there's not anything breaking up the monotony of the looping soundtrack. And the soundtrack is very good, but when that's just that looping in the background over and over again while you read a story, like that gets kind of fatiguing, at least to me.
Yeah.
So the soundtrack was composed by Kevin Penkin, who also did Florence, Maiden Abyss, and Norn 9. The thing that I have a problem with is just that it's a little bit too chill for me. So it tends to make me sleepy, which is a problem because I'm reading a lot of text, you know?
Yeah.
But I know that said that there are a lot of listeners who would enjoy it because most of the listeners tend to listen to things that are a lot more chill than me. So,
Right.
Anyway, other things about the gameplay as it is. There's a doodle mode where you can draw faces on 3 little robots that pop up at the end of the chapters to make comments. There's also a studio mode, and this is probably the highlight of things to do with this game, where you can compose your own shots, add dialogue, and tell stories using the assets from the game. And that's very neat for people who are into the game and the characters and want to, you know, do more with it.
Yeah.
Or for people who just like game making stuff in particular, you know, like Gary's Mod type stuff. But it's, for me, I have it on Switch. That seems very laborious to even try to do on Switch.
Yeah.
It's really best on the PC. As for the writing, so the writing, I mentioned it a little bit. It's meant to be witty and funny and charming, and it succeeded enough that I played half of the game, but not enough for me to be invested in the characters or the scenario to the point where I was like, I need to see the end of the story. Like, I think it's probably more because of the slice of life presentation of it that I just don't feel myself compelled to go forward, you know? What has carried me for the part that I did play was that cinematography that they had going, which was very, very neat. I think that's just the easiest word for me to use there. It was just very neat to see these things presented in this way, because I hadn't seen that done before. I'd seen motion comics, which that's one thing. And I'd seen, you know, visual novels, but this was kind of doing a different thing that's somewhere between those things.
Yeah.
You know, that and like somewhere between that and even FMV to a certain extent, except not voiced. But also, I didn't find the humor nearly as funny. And I don't know if that's just like, it's just not as funny as like, you know, it's presented to be, or if it's just it doesn't appeal to me in particular. It could very well be that I'm just really not the audience for this, even though I thought I was a shoe-in. So the folks who did enjoy it, and I know lots of people who did, really like the exploration of the ethics of necromancy, the coffee culture, and just the process of letting go. Insofar as like the ethics of necromancy, I kind of already turned that around in my head with the first 3 or 4 volumes of Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series from like way back in the day before it went real wackadoodle. Like, because it's only like the first maybe 3 books before it goes off on rails because Laurel K. Hamilton got a divorce and went crazy. Anyway, but like in that series of books, the main character is an animator of the undead, and there's like undead rights and stuff like that. Anyway, it was notable for its time period because this was like mid 90s when the first books came out. But I'd already many, many moons ago covered all of this stuff before. So this game was not covering new ground in that regard for me. Right. Coffee culture, and then the process of letting go. I've seen some other games that broach that subject a little bit, and I probably just missed the good part of this. I've been told that the very, very end of the game is the best part, but like if I'm struggling at halfway, that's like a war of attrition to get to that end where it gets really good. And
they're always going to say that. They're always going to say it's better. It's best at the end.
Well, okay, so other games that are mentioned related to the kind of idea, the thrust behind the overall plot and what's going on. are A Mortician's Tale, which I actually have on my backlog to try.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah. Also, especially since like I've read a couple of memoirs by morticians and in things like that. So anyway, and also What Remains of Edith Finch. And I know you like that game, Kole. So it might be that maybe you would like this game better than I did. I'm not sure.
The lack of any real interactivity that isn't just kind of window dressing.
Yeah.
It's
for me to like a game, I need there to be game.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was waiting for. Like, even if it was just occasionally there's some kind of a action that you take, even if it's just like, it could even be like the what was it, the vampire visual novel, Vampire the Masquerade visual novels that I was playing, where it was kind of arbitrary, like it ended up leading you to the same ending no matter what. It just had like a slightly different route if you pick one or the other thing. I wouldn't even mind if it was like faking me out, telling me to go, to make a choice, because at least I'm thinking about it and pushing a button.
It doesn't take an awful lot. I mean, Steins Gate, right? Like that's probably about as far as I would want to go on the let's say visual novel lack of interactivity spectrum, so like if at the max is something like Danganronpa and at the minimum is and then at another far end is Necrobarista. Like there's got to at least be branching paths and stuff, and it just kind of sounds like this is a straight pipe through, and there's a place for just kind of like a digital comic, which I know that this is more than that, and there's like more effort put into it. This sounds like a really kind of like a hybrid kind of thing. There's a place for that, but I feel like I can get what this is playing with elsewhere. I mean, even just the coping with loss thing, like sounds like Spiritfarer, but Spiritfarer has a management sim on top of it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at too. It's not that this game is bad. It's just that like going into it, I don't know what I was expecting, but I guess I was expecting at least more to do than it has. So the cinematography and a portion of that writing are the things that kept me going for as long as they did, but just the whole thing was not going to be able to ride on that. Ultimately, I felt apathetic about the narrative, so that's why I decided to shelve it, because I got what I was going to get out of it. Like, I really enjoyed the cinematography, and I would like to see, like, if they did another game that was in this kind of style, but with actually stuff to do in it, other than, at the end of the chapter, you can walk around and read more and then doodle on things. Like, if they did something with more interactivity to it that was in this vein, I would be 100% there for it. Yeah. It's just that this was not going to work for me. So I would recommend this game for people who understand going into it, what it's like and how it plays. Right. I would only suggest it for folks who like the things I mentioned: slice of life, Western takes on anime, lots of side stories, and tailored cinematic experiences, because this is a very tailored experience. It's meant to kind of give you something it's nominally a game, but it's not really, and the bulk of it is not game. So, but I will say that this is absolutely a labor of love, and all the developers' love really shows through in the quality of the production and the number of side stories that they wrote about everybody. Like, these folks lived and breathed this and enjoyed the heck out of it. Every moment they were working on it is how it feels when you go through the game. But unfortunately, that's just not enough to get me to finish it. So. Right. They already got my money, though, so I guess they're good.
Good for them.
So,
yeah.
It's a well-written letter. It's just not in your language.
Yeah. So any questions about Necrobarista, which I keep on wanting to call Necrobarista because
kitties.
Kitties and anime.
You mentioned that they go into like coffee culture. Like, how deep do they dip into that? Or like,
it's more about like the that one guy that comes into the cafe and has the super detailed order that what does whatever, that kind of thing, where it goes into that and it talks about stuff that people order and how that has to do with how they are, and
Okay.
all that, whatever,
Yeah,
some other stuff. And there's a lot of kind of coffee chat kind of vibe going to it where you're just hanging out and sitting at like I used to, back when I was doing belly dance way before a pandemic and stuff like that, I used to, after work, go drive over to the area where the belly dance studio was and go to a coffee shop and either work on client programming for personal training, or I would, play video games for podcasts or something like that, or draw. And sometimes I'd just hang out and just talk to the barista at the little cafe, bar part. And I would just sit at the bar and just hang out and talk. And I ended up becoming really good friends with the barista. So it's kind of that kind of a vibe,
Okay, cool.
So.
Yeah, but it's really not about how deep you dip into it. It's about the implement you use for dipping, and you need that ionized gold mesh. Otherwise, you're just gonna get the acidity of your observations coming through, and none of the rich meditation.
Well, in my mind, what I was hoping for was like Sideways the movie, but for coffee instead of wine.
No. You are going farther into it than this game was delving. So anyway, any other questions about Necrobarista?
I mean, all that I've got in terms of puns is, do they, once they're ready to pass on, do you send them to the crematorium? But that's a pretty. You could also do the crematorium. Yeah, either of those. Yeah. No, that's all I got.
That gets the little golf clap. Okay. Okay. Other game I've been playing: Fire Emblem Echoes: Shadows of Valentia.
This is the action one, right?
This is the what one?
The action one?
No.
Okay.
This one, Fire Emblem Echoes, is the remake of the second Fire Emblem on 3DS. So I pulled up my 3DS because I was like, okay, eShop is going away. I need to open it up and look at the shop. And then I was just also going through my game cartridges. And then I realized I had been thinking about buying another Fire Emblem game on my 3DS and playing it. And I went through my game cartridges and realized, oh, crap, I already have Fire Emblem Echoes. I must have bought that after Awakening and just like stuck it in there and just forgot I had it. So, because like I had enough Fire Emblem by the time I finished Awakening, and I did not want to go into another one at the time. So, anyway, so I surprised myself with a gift to my, to the future self from the past self. So, anyway, this is the 15th installment of the series, but it is 2017, as I mentioned before, a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden, the second game, which was released in 1992, but never brought to the West. So, at least unless you have a fan translation, this is the only way to play the second game in the series, is this remake. And it follows protagonists Alm and Celica as they attempt to end a war through opposite methods. Alm is a warrior, and he seeks to end the war by winning it, and Celica is a priestess and seeks the guidance of the goddess Milla to end the war. And it features the core gameplay mechanics of the tiled turn-based tactical battles that you know from any other Fire Emblem game, but it also incorporates dungeon crawling, which comes up specifically in Gaiden. So this game was developed right after Fire Emblem Fates. I bought that. I haven't played it yet, but I have that. And I'm just telling people for the record. So if I surprise myself in 2 years and say, what the hell is this game? I didn't know I had it. Well, you can be like, Jala, you even said it on the podcast. Anyway, it came out right after Fire Emblem Fates and incorporates some of the team from that game, as well as some of the team from Fire Emblem Awakening, which was the next installment after this one. And it was intended as the culmination of the Fire Emblem series on 3DS. So, story-wise, sibling gods Milla and Duma fought for control over the continent of Valentia. They eventually called a ceasefire. Both of them took over part of the continent and then formed kingdoms, with the worshippers of Milla being in Zofia, which is where Alm and Celica are from, and then the worshippers of Duma being in the kingdom of Rigel. So there are 5 acts in this game, and some post-game content where Alm, Celica, and their allies can travel across the sea to Arcania, which is the setting of the very first Fire Emblem. And they can explore a labyrinth there and learn about the creation of what would later become Grima, which is an antagonist from Fire Emblem Awakening. So they like tie it in not just to the original Fire Emblem game, but also to Awakening, which was going to come up next. So at the moment, I am currently near the end of Act 3 out of 5. During Act 1, you play as Alm and you leave your home village to join the Deliverance, which is a force of the Kingdom of Zofia seeking to free itself from the invaders from the nearby Kingdom of Rigel. You manage to free the castle, but then Alm decides to take the fight to the Rigelians and hunt those the people that were invading down, hunt the leaders down, in order to prevent another invasion in the future. During Act 2, you play as Celica, Princess of Zofia, who was raised in hiding in a monastery on an island, and she decides that it's time to take action to free her homeland, so she sets off for Zofia with her friends and fights pirates and saves a bunch of people along the way, fights necro dragons, which are just undead dragons. When she gets to Zofia Castle, she finds out that it has already been liberated by the Deliverance, and then she re-meets Alm, whom she grew up with for a time in his village until she was discovered by Rigelian forces and then hurriedly relocated further away. So she's been best friends with Alm, and they look like they were going to get married when they were older, but now when they re-meet, they end up having a falling out about the approach to how to end the war. And that ends bitterly. During Act 3, you play both Alm and Celica as they part ways and head out on their separate missions trying to save Zofia. So Alm is over on one side of the map, hunting down the ringleaders of the invasion, while Celica continues to help random people fight off bandits and other stuff, and then also marches onwards towards the Temple of Mila to seek the goddess's guidance on what to do. And you have more enemies appearing on both sides of the map at the same time, so you kind of have to juggle and go back and forth between teams in order to manage how many players are on the map at a time. Because those enemy forces can block your way to get back to a village, or they can be reinforcements for a coming battle and just all be hovering in one spot. So that is why it is important to kind of juggle and go back and forth, because they will every once in a while more enemies will pop up.
How quickly can you snap between the two characters? Is it like instantaneous, like press a button, you move over to the other one, or like you need to get to a save point or something like that?
Well, you have the overworld map, and you've got your characters on the overworld map. You've got your enemies on the overworld map, and you have to move one of your characters in a direction to fight the next battle or do whatever, go backwards towards a town or whatever. But every time you move your character a spot, like if you're going back 3 spaces to go to a town or something to go restore your supplies, then those 3 instances might well spawn some more guys on the map. For each time you move, the enemy gets a move. And sometimes, after a certain number of turns, the enemy respawns somebody. So,
yeah.
Okay.
But like you can, in between battles, like you finish each battle as one or the other team. And then once you're on the overworld, you can swap between parties and things like that. A thing to note is that when you're controlling both of these teams, if you want to play DLC quests, that does not take a move on the map and does not spawn further folks. So you can go into the DLC and grind to get XP or whatever you need, or play some of the what eventually is called paralogs. In this game, it's not called paralogs. It's just, story missions or whatever. And you can play those. So, like you can do some stuff, but it's only if you've got the DLC on the cart.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at right now. Like I said, there's 5 acts to the main story, and then like bonus material at the end of it that is, going off, setting sail for Marth's kingdom and, seeing the beginning of Grima. there's a lot of flash forward cinematics in this game that shows some really emotional stuff that happens, presumably near the end of the game, I guess, to keep you interested on how things pan out. Because, like, at the end of every single one of these acts so far, there's been like a cinematic where it's like, wow, that's something that's definitely end game content that you're showing me right there. Having to do with what's going on with Alm and Celica. And so it serves to make what's going on currently in the game where you are actually at playing more poignant, and it puts in the back of your head there's some bad stuff coming up in the story for these two, and it kind of I guess helps to drive investment in the here and now of what's going on with those characters. Like, instead of just going, oh, you're so stupid, just go say good, say I'm sorry or whatever, why can't you just see eye to eye? Instead of that, you're like, oh, you can see it coming from a mile away, like you can that the train wreck is up ahead, the cliff's there, and you're watching everything go towards the cliff, and you're like, how are they going to resolve all this? And so that's how they're serving to get you really interested in the story without putting a lot of story in between all of the battles. Like, this game is lighter on the narrative bits between battles than something like Awakening is. And that's because, again, this is like a remake of game number 2.
This is an NES game or a Famicom game. Yeah.
Yeah. This is old as hell. So anyway, let's talk a little bit more about the gameplay on that note of gameplay. So you can choose classic or casual mode, as well as difficulty setting at the start of the game. Classic mode is where if anybody dies in combat, they die for real. If they die in the game, they die in the game. They're not coming back. And then casual mode is, of course, they come back at the end of the battle. No big deal. There's DLC available, some of which allows you, like I said, to grind in between the battles on the map if you want to, and some have additional stories. As you navigate over points on the overworld map, you can enter those towns that I mentioned, and those are few and far between. There's not very many towns in these kingdoms that are left for you to go into. Most of them have been razed by the armies. So, and even the ones that are still there have been terrorized, Anyway, there's also dungeons. You can encounter enemies on the overworld map, like I had mentioned previously, and that generates additional battles, not all of which are narrative driven. It could just be highwaymen that respawn because there's a lot of chaos in the kingdom, and these people are taking advantage or something.
Yeah.
And then, like that, you do have battles that are not connected directly to the story as well in this game. Yeah. So the weapon triangle, the rock, paper, scissors style system where certain weapons have advantages over others, and limited weapon durability are both completely absent from this game. So you don't have weapons breaking down on you, and there isn't a weapon triangle. So like, I kept on trying to hide my Pegasus Knight from all the archers, and then they did like 2 damage. And I was like, Claire can just kill everyone. Why even bother? Let's just send in Claire. She'll do it.
That is wild to me that they don't use those systems. Because like, again, this is just Nintendo. For some reason, when they make a second game in a franchise in the NES era, they just do it completely differently.
Well, when I talk about the dungeons, you'll see like some more stuff that's weird about it. So yeah, like the limited weapon durability and the weapon triangle are gone. And instead, units have a standard weapon that they use for the entire campaign that you can't equip or unequip. They just default have it. But you can provide one additional item to any character. You cannot carry multiple items, only one item per character. You can give some of them weapons or shields, and those are actually upgradable. You can take them to a smithy in certain towns that have a smithy. Not all of them do. And giving them silver marks or gold marks, you can increase the power of the weapons by giving them multiple star ratings. And then you can also evolve them into a new weapon if it's a certain type. Like there is a shadow sword, for example, which is a cursed weapon. And I transformed that into a brave sword, which has like a low might, but it has a high crit rate, for example. So I transferred this cursed weapon into something more usable for my party. And you have to, of course, like I mentioned, have money for this. And in the standard game, it's hard to come by. And in the DLC, you can get silver marks, but not gold marks. And some of the stuff, the higher tier stuff, you have to have gold marks. So I believe the gold marks are basically like the limiting factor to keep you from being totally OP with the equipment.
Yeah.
So each unit, like I mentioned, can only carry one weapon or item. You can carry healing items and, heal yourself, but you can only use them on yourself. You can't use them on somebody else. You can trade with somebody, but you can't be like shoving an orange in their face. Like, here, eat the orange. You are healed, my son. Like, that's not how that works. So, shields, I didn't mention those. Shields can also have combat arts, as can, other weapons and things. So shield combat arts would be something like swapping places with a unit that you're next to, for example, which is extremely useful if you've got a healer that goes up to heal somebody, gets, attacked by an enemy, and you just want to switch places so they don't die on the next turn. You can do that if you've got somebody with a shield. They can run up and switch real quick. And of course, you can have weapon attacks that have higher damage or crit rates or something like that. So when mages use magic, they sacrifice some of their hit points to use those skills. So the stronger the skill, the more hit points they need to sacrifice. And certain combat arts also take hit points. So that's, like a factor to consider in combat. There's not even a magic gauge. There's just, you've got one bar, and when it's depleted, you die. That's all. And I have a healer who can summon like spiritual little warrior dudes, up to like 6 of them at a time, but it takes well over half of her health to do that. So if I do that, it needs to be at the very beginning, and I need to have her with like a blessed ring or something, or like an item that she can eat to heal herself, because healers can heal other people, but they can't heal themselves. So they either have to have like a healing item on their person that is consumable, or one of the passive effects like the blessed ring. So all of your units come preloaded with a character class, except when you recruit villagers, and that only happens in certain parts of the game. Villagers tend to start out very weak and low level, but they can be made into any class and strengthened. So, dungeons. In the dungeons, every time a unit is used in battle, their fatigue meter is filled. And when they are fatigued, completely fatigued, their max health decreases and certain skills are blocked. They just can't do as much. They can't move as far. Like, they're tired, and you can restore them by giving them gifts like food items and things like that, or by purifying them at the statue of the goddess found at the end of the dungeon. And once you clear a dungeon, it repopulates, so you always need to recover before turning around and leaving, because otherwise you might get into a random battle and have like 5 fatigued guys, or whatever, depending upon how much you fought in that particular dungeon. The dungeons, when you're exploring them, are 3D. It goes from like this overworld tactical battle map to being like a 3D dungeon crawler. So
weird. Like first person, or
it's over the shoulder.
Okay.
So
wait, so and then if you end up like too fatigued, like, can you be too tired to leave effectively? Like, is that a way that you could get folks killed?
No, not exactly, because like when you're in the 3D dungeon map, what happens is you are Ulm on the map, and you are running around, and you can dodge around actual enemies that you see in the dungeon, or you can sneak up on them and hit them with your sword to get like the drop on them and also damage them, they come into the battle with a little bit of life shaved off. If they surprise you, however, they get reinforcements. So, it's very important that you are always aware of where folks are on the map. And once you hit that and trigger a battle, either they hit you or you hit them, then it switches to the traditional turn-based map that you're used to from every other Fire Emblem game. So like if Alm is fatigued, it's only when it's in the battle, not in the actual like 3D part of it.
Yeah.
So you can't screw yourself too bad.
No, you can't really screw yourself too bad. And I'm playing on normal mode and casual mode, but really like I could go through this game on classic mode, normal mode, and be absolutely fine without having to worry about everybody dying. Like, you just have to be careful with Celica's team in particular, because they are very underwhelming compared to Alm's team.
Yeah.
Alm gets all the good guys because he's like the warrior dude, and she's just like a priestess with a couple of mage allies, and then like some other folks who just happen to come along for the ride. And like, she's pretty underwhelming. I'm not a big fan of most of her team. So like there are a few battles you have to fight where it's just like Priestess Celica and a couple of mages versus zombies. Have fun,
Right.
Okay, cool. So anyway, okay. There are also support conversations between characters who fight next to each other a lot, but at least from what I'm seeing in the game, it feels like there's only select characters that can have these interactions, as backing one character up doesn't necessarily make the little sparkles of a support increase happen, because usually there's like little sparklies after the enemy dies, and then, a little increased sound. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, sometimes dialogue, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll like, interject and go nice or leave some for me or whatever.
Yeah.
They say stuff like that, but what I've seemed to notice is that it's whatever character is sort of nearby that there's some kind of rapport with already, even if that character is not the one that's been attacking the same enemy. Like it skips over the enemy being defended or assisted entirely and goes to whoever's around that already has rapport, and then increases that one. So that's why I think that it's like, okay, it feels like there must be only certain support conversations that were scripted, because it doesn't seem to matter that I've got Leon next to Gray. Leon and Gray are not having a friendship.
Yeah. That's
So
the only Fire Emblem game that I've played an appreciable amount of is the Sacred Stones, which is another weirdo entry in the series. But that is an early, it's a port of an early game. I think that maybe like just like the universal accounting or the universal like bonus that you get for having people together didn't come until later, because in that one it was like, okay, you get a bonus if this brother and sister are fighting next to each other, or if these two veterans who fought in the same like two historically like were in the army and this for the same country previously. Stuff, just a bunch of stuff like that was when you would get those bonuses. So I think maybe this just predates that.
Yeah, I'm thinking so too, because this was right before Awakening, which is to say Awakening is where everybody can be friends with everybody.
Yeah.
So at this game, they hadn't made that call yet, which also tells me that when I play Fire Emblem Fates, I can expect that it probably isn't going to have, 100% on these support conversations. Or it could be that because this is a remake of the second game, that they didn't want to add in a whole bunch of dialogue that wasn't in the original, and all of that. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, because I didn't play the original version of this. So anyway, there's also Milla's Turn Wheel, which is a device that allows you to rewind the events of battle to correct mistakes. This is a feature that's in several of the newer Fire Emblem games. It has this very severely limited use in this game, and it has to be recharged at a statue of Milla using items that you give as offerings. but it is available. I have not had a use for it, like I haven't had a use in the other games, because frankly speaking, like especially on a first playthrough, I'm in it for the story. I'm not trying to make it real hard on myself to get through.
Right.
Like whenever I go back to Awakening, I will probably try it on a harder mode, but that's because I've already seen it. I can go back through on a harder mode on the second time, but like just for the first time, I'm not going to bother.
Yeah.
And this game also has amiibo support. So you can use Alm and Celica amiibo to summon phantom units for a single turn at the cost of a character's health. You can also have non-Fire Emblem amiibos that summon monsters into the game. And the Alm and Celica in particular can be used outside of battle to unlock special exclusive dungeons. So there's a dungeon each for each of those two amiibos. So
yeah.
Whew, that is all I've got for Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia at this time. I will have more when I have finished. Any questions about this game?
From a game without much game into it to a game with all the game in it.
Oh, this one is so game light compared to like Three Houses. Remember, that was like 7 novels worth of me trying to explain what you can do in that game.
Yeah.
So like this is the light version for folks who don't want to deal with weapon durability and trying to, up all the support conversations and like all this other management stuff. Like if you just want to fight the fights and go through the tactical part and see some things happen on the screen, then you should play this one. This is a pretty good entry for that kind of thing. But I will say there are a few characters that I really like, and then a lot of characters I don't care about because I don't see very much story or interaction with them. They're just kind of showed up and they have barks in combat, and I'm like, okay, that's as much as I know about you, bro.
Yeah, so. I'm pretty sure any of the interest or any of the character had to have been added in as part of the updating, just because there wasn't, I can't imagine there was much room for it in the the Famicom days.
Especially if they were doing dungeon crawling and the tactical RPG stuff also. Yeah. Like, okay.
I think I'm starting. Like, I think I understand why this got kind of a cool reception from people. From specifically Fire Emblem fans. Just because it is such a departure. Like especially from in a post-Awakening world when a lot of people probably signed on and were super jazzed about the way that game handled, some of the softer elements, or like even systematize some of the softer elements, to turn around and go to this kind of crunchy dungeon crawler. It seems like it would have been a bit of a jostling of expectations, let's say.
Yeah, like for me, I didn't go into this game with like a big expectation one way or the other, because my history with Fire Emblem is Fire Emblem Awakening and then Fire Emblem Three Houses, both of them once. Like there's like 18 entries in the series. I am not presuming that I know a damn thing about the series. Right. So especially knowing that this was like a remake of a really old game. Like I'm once I realized that part, I was like, oh, it makes sense now why it's the way that it is. It's kind of like a weirdo. And it's also the guiding game. It's like, okay, well, I'm fine with that. And, like I like Alm quite a bit. I like some of the other characters quite a bit. So, like I'm enjoying the game. It's got about the standard amount of Fire Emblem story. Like Fire Emblem, it's kind of like, I don't play Shin Megami Tensei for their overwrought story. Right. I don't play Fire Emblems for the overwrought story. I'm there for the gameplay, and I'm there for like the interactions between the characters, and that's kind of like what I'm in for the Fire Emblem games. And this has enough of that I'm fine with it. And I like the little dungeon crawly sections. It's a nice little wrinkle with a little bit of a different style of gameplay, so it's not rote like, oh, here's more of the same battle system. Like it's got it's still got the same battle system, but it has new ways to approach it. So
nice.
Yep.
Cool. Dennis, I promised we would go to you. What you got for us?
Yeah. I finished a game that I talked about a while ago. I finished the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I have to like stop and think to make sure I put all those title segments in the right sequence.
Colons in the right place.
Yeah, too many subtitles.
So it's a dumb name, but I actually really enjoyed the game. And it's one of those things where I think I got to the end of it and I was like, man, I rarely see credits on a game nowadays. I feel like, so many games are designed to be the forever live service game or the roguelike. You play this through 600 times to see all the content. There was something refreshing about just playing like a really well done, almost an Uncharted with lightsabers that had a good story and an arc, and you could start it and finish it, and you didn't feel like you had to spend a ton more time on it. So I got a good story out of it, and it is well done. It's a little predictable, but the story of the game is I enjoyed. And yeah, so saw credits on it. There a couple thoughts I had that I just thought were interesting or bright spots on the game. They do a thing with bounty hunters that I really like, where, at a certain point, it becomes clear that the Empire has bounty hunters after you. And from that point on, just at any random spot, you can walk out and find bounty hunters waiting for you in parts of the level you've been through before, in areas that are not like significant or set pieces at all. And it's just a little mini boss fight that can hit you at any point.
Yeah.
And you actually will recognize some of the bounty hunters, or see them more than once. And it was, it only happened probably 4 or 5 or 6 times throughout my playthrough. But that was enough for it to have me convinced that there was a bounty hunter around every single corner. Which is fun. Like that's exactly the tension that that idea of being hunted injects.
Yeah. It sounds kind of like you make it sound like NPC invasions in Dark Souls.
Yes. No, it's very much got that vibe where, the first time you encounter it, you kind of it's an area where you're just fighting a lot of generic stormtroopers and you're like, oh, you person on the other side of this field, you're not a stormtrooper. Well, I will go up and talk to you. Let's see what this is. Oh, you're shooting at me. Okay. Oh, we're fighting. There's a health bar. Let's, all right. And the first time you actually die to a bounty hunter or they capture you, you're taken to a whole nother level that you have to then escape. So that's, really kind of a fun thing. And then I was worried the second time I faced a bounty hunter that every time I died to a bounty hunter, I was going to get taken to this other level, because that would be a real drag when, I've cleared this level. I just want to go back to what I was doing. They don't do that. But you only get one chance at every bounty hunter. So you either defeat them or they won't be there waiting for you again when you come back.
Will they be waiting for you somewhere else? Like, is it kind of thrown into a pool?
Exactly.
There we go. Okay.
You've got it. Which is just great. And that's why I say you start seeing some of them multiple times. Like you turn a corner and you're just like, we have unfinished business. So that was a really fun part of the game and just injected a lot of personality, and it just made you believe that a boss fight could be around any corner. There's no dull parts or transitional parts. There could be something interesting everywhere. And speaking of which, I kind of mainlined the primary story, and early on it gives you the option to go to a world. It's basically like, hey, you're following in the footsteps of this guy, the evidence points that we need to go here. And then there was also a world that he seems to have been interested in. You can go there if you want. And I never went and checked that out because I was doing the main quest, and you only wind up going to the world or being forced to go to the world much later in the game. And the story it didn't break down all the way, but there was just this weird, it was very clear that the writers expected you to have gone, the world is Dathomir. They expected you to go to Dathomir and explore it a little bit and hit a wall and leave at some point before you were forced to go. Because there's a very clear chunk of the story where it's like, oh, I can't get past this unless, I found the thing. Now we'll have all these conversations that they would make a lot more sense if I came and I left. Characters like have time to think about things or change their opinion or from that standpoint, when it's like, I just talked to you 5 minutes ago, where'd this change of heart come from? So yeah, they couldn't account for everything in the story, I guess. And I had kind of rampaged through pieces of the plot because of that. But like I said, overall, the story was really well done. And the final boss fight as a capstone on just the game overall and knowing the mechanics is just excellent. Like, I found myself going to all of like the different lightsaber techniques and things that I picked up skill wise instead of relying on cheesing it or feeling like only certain things would work. And the combat was really great. It's a lightsaber duel. The combat was really great in that I was, rather than just trying to like watch for the pattern, I felt like I had to watch for like where her swings were coming from, because there are times where, you can dodge left or right, but if she's swinging from the left and you dodge into it, you're still going to get hit.
Yeah.
And so the safe thing to do is just to dodge backwards and keep on advancing out. But if you want to stay close enough that you can kind of seize a window to counterattack, you got to expose yourself to some danger and be a lot more intentional about how you dodge.
Yeah.
So that just felt really, really well done in a way that you can't do when you're fighting enemies that die quickly. So, a real strength of the combat system and maybe the animation that they could telegraph it that well. And I'm a little bit sad that they didn't get more opportunities to really showcase that, because, most of the fights are against stormtroopers that
right.
plow through legions of.
Yeah. They exist to be cut down.
Yes. They also, the stormtroopers are way more humanized than they need to be in the game. Like, got a bit of the Last of Us 2 effect where, you're walking up. Yeah. T934. You'll walk up and one guy, they'll just be bending me like, yeah, the comm unit in my helmet keeps on going out. You know what I'm saying? He's like, oh yeah, there's just a little like the wire comes loose over here. Let me fix it for you. And you're like, I'm about to kill you. I feel so bad. The combat is very solid. It is a nice blend of that kind of Dark Souls-y calculated. More than one enemy is difficult, while still feeling fairly action oriented. So maybe a bit more on the Bloodborne side of things. And you definitely reach a point in your power level where you are just kind of mowing through people pretty aggressively, which is, that's where the boss fights start standing out. So overall, as like a compact experience that you can go get a AAA story and play a pretty solid game. And then like I said, I don't feel any pressure to go back through or get the season pass or whatever. Like, that is refreshing to me. And I think it's, watching how well Elden Ring has done, it's refreshing to a lot of people. Like, single player games seem to be alive and kicking. Because I've played other games this week that just feel, even though they're good games, I'll get into it in a second. Like, there's just a weight of feeling like, oh, this is designed to be my forever game, and I don't want it to be that.
You can't have that many things vying for that position.
Yeah, I get it. Time is the scarce resource. I understand. But man, I guess the game that's making me think this weirdly is Dead Cells.
Okay.
And I dipped into it. So I think there's a combination of things. And Dead Cells doesn't have a season pass or anything. It's not designed to be a forever game, but it's very much in the roguelike formula of, you're going to start off with very limited equipment and knowledge of the game, and then you're going to unlock things progressively as you play. And it's meant to be played over run after run. Which is, that is fine, but there's so many roguelikes out there that my bar for like needing to do something really, really different and interesting is pretty high at this point. And Dead Cells is an extremely well put together game. Cool pixel art, really fluid and fast paced combat. Like it almost felt like Hotline Miami in places, where it's like, hey, I want to bash through these. You get rewarded if you finish in a section with a certain amount of speed. So you want to bash through enemies as quickly as possible. But just knowing like, okay, before I can like seriously feel like I can beat this game, I know I'm going to have to spend X amount of time just unlocking stuff. I don't know. It made me feel tired.
Yeah.
Did you guys get that at all?
No. We're covering so many roguelites and run-based games on Watch Out for Fireballs. Just people have been asking for them. I'm very privy to this fatigue. I know it well. Yeah.
I think my issue is like the runs are like 2 to 3 hours maybe if you go far enough. So it's like right after you finish one, it's like I can't start another one. Like this is too long.
Yeah. one run a night. Maybe that's a run a day keeps fatigue away. I think I got to the Hand of the King, and it felt like final boss territory, just from where like story hints had been leading and everything like that, and certainly like the combat difficulty. But I have no idea if that means I was halfway through or all the way through or what. These games are designed to have a lot to see even after you've beat the final boss. But I think I kind of got to that fight, got close to winning, but not. And my feeling, instead of like, all right, yes, I was close, I can go again, was like, okay, so that's my time with the game.
Yeah.
I'm trying, like I said, the bar is you have to do something really new and interesting. And like, yes, there's, different abilities that combo together in different ways. David, I remember, talked about like, he had a build around like throwing lots of bombs, and you can definitely, find that and break that. But that's exactly what you do in Hades and Dreamscaper I talked about a little bit earlier. And like all these games have that aspect.
To be fair, this game came out before Hades.
Yes.
That is very fair. They're getting a fatigue from me vis-a-vis roguelites that they might have not had to compete with at the time.
Yeah.
So that's where that thought comes from, and that's Dead Cells. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts or questions to add to that.
You triggered another thing where talking about boss fights. That's another thing where it's like, okay, if you come to a new boss, like you have to learn the moveset and learn how to beat it, and you're probably not going to beat it the first time. So it's like really demoralizing to be like, all right, I got to make another run and grind through 2 or 3 hours just to get to the boss and maybe learn how to beat it, but not actually beat it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I have a hard enough time in the Dark Souls, the brief time that I played it, having to run like 2 minutes to the boss over and over again. So
call that a long iteration loop when you have to do the whole, and that's one of the things that was an undoing when we tried to do Returnal on Bonfireside Chat.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That game has that pretty bad, I've heard.
Yes.
There are the cool fun builds. Like you're unlocking things as you go, and you can see what you are putting points towards unlocking. And so it's like, ooh, there's a shiny object in the window that would be perfect for my build this run. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to get too excited about putting points into it when you know that the when you're actually going to be able to use it is not when you're going to have this perfect item combination for it again.
And you're not buying that item, you are buying the chance to get it in the future, which feels immensely unsatisfying.
It's just like, why, and if you're not pouring your points into that, you're pouring points into increasing the chance that items will spawn as their rare version or whatever. There is an itch that whole like giant systems machine gets slightly more efficient over time. Like that is a source of fun. I think it's just there's so many games that are plucking at that string right now that it just feels a little overused.
Yeah.
Learn a new chord.
Every time I see Dead Cells in the news, because they've done a good job at putting out new expansions for it on the reg ever since they, first released it. Right. But every time I see every time I see news, I'm hoping that they say this is the one that has a fixed campaign in it. Like for anybody who wanted this to be a single player game with this aesthetic and this movement and, some of these builds and things, so just like with these items, like, I would want that very much, please. And just Dead Cells is a game that feels very good in my hands, that is aesthetically right up my alley, that is also just Teflon to me. I can't get a hold of it because it does not have hooks. It does not have hooks for a Kole.
You know what they need is dead cells with a buy-in. Like you buy in at the start of a Counter-Strike round. Like you get to pick your enhancements and weapons from a list at the start.
Yeah.
And maybe put some run over run stuff so you can have your economy rounds or whatever. But just give yourself a little bit more control over what you do. And you can go into custom mode and change what items you have access to from the list of items you unlock. So there are ways to play that you can effectively guarantee that you're going to get a certain build.
Yeah.
But that kind of pulls you out of the main game, and you don't. It said something at the start about what happens. Like you don't get credit for it in terms of progression, I think. Which it's there, but it's not designed around that. But yeah, and I hate sounding so lukewarm on the game because, like you said, Cole, aesthetically this is a great game, and play wise, it's a great game. Lots of fun. It's just the system that's built around it in terms of being a roguelite demands something a little bit more. I don't know. Yeah. All right, that's Dead Cells. Let's talk about a game that does something really cool and new and fun.
Okay.
And so I'm going to go from being lukewarm to gushing. I started playing Tunic.
Ooh, yeah. Zelda-like.
And yes, Zelda-like. I had no idea what that really meant going in. I guess it means like kind of puzzly areas, and you get new equipment that'll lets you get to new areas within that. But man, like David and I were texting about this game, and it is so good. So like you said, it's a Zelda-like game. You wake up as a little fox on a shoreline. The big unique thing about this game is that it explains nothing to you. You kind of just have your familiarity with the genre going in to have an idea of what you should do. But every time you look at a sign, or there's a bit of story, it's all in runes that you can't actually read. However, as you go through the game world, you will start picking up pages of an instruction manual. And you guys know how much I love a good instruction manual, right? This game is built around progressively discovering an instruction manual. The manual is still in runes. So they're like maybe words that are in English. But as you go, you're piecing together new abilities or where to go or all this stuff just from what you see in the manual, looking at pictures and kind of using context of what you're seeing in the game. And like this was made for me. This is exactly the vibe I got playing was a Super Mario Land 3 on Game Boy, which was Wario Land. I forget exactly which one that was, but like where I had the manual and I was paging through and it's like, oh, this is this enemy, and it throws a boomerang, and like it's exactly that with tips and guides to items and what they might do. And it just makes my heart so happy. Like I finished playing it. I was like, oh, this is so good. And it even reclaims that stage where you were playing games and you weren't that good at reading yet. And so you like had the manual, but you don't really know what's going on. Like it taps into something deep in your childhood that I like.
In your childhood.
This is a love note to me. And just like, I didn't even think to ask to recapture that feel. And here it is for me on a platter. That is just so cool. The gameplay of it is, like you said, kind of Zelda, like you're going through discrete puzzly areas. It feels like on a Game Boy these would have been screens that you're shifting back and forth through, like you see in Zelda. However, it's a little bit more dynamic than that, and everything's got a very pretty filter on it and has this kind of blocky, low poly twee kind of style to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like voxely, but not voxels.
Yeah.
It's foxily.
Yeah.
Come now.
And you're trying to rescue or free someone. My kids who are watching me play immediately was like, that's his mom. I was like, well, how do you know that's his mom? It's just his mom. They're like 100% certain this I don't know if it's a princess, but this person that you're trying to rescue is the fox's mom.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out, I guess, or not. This game is very vague about what you're doing. But so you're kind of exploring this world and coming up against a bunch there you go, of walls that guide you in the right direction to objects that allow you to go over those walls, and you progress accordingly. Yeah, I love this game. Like, this is it's like nestling up next to a cozy fire. It's so good. The other thing that comes to mind that just is really cool that the game does is there's a bunch of shortcuts that are just there, but you don't notice until you see them from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does the whole thing where, like, hey, once you beat an area, you kind of get the bridge back into the main area, or you find a route that can get you to the area faster. But there's no gate that's stopping you from taking that faster route. It's just like behind a tree. And if you were really kind of picking over every inch of the world, and I'm sure this will happen to me at some point, you're going to find shortcuts that will allow you to kind of leap ahead in ways that I don't think will be game breaking, but are just will be feel very special to discover. So the confidence in design to like put these shortcuts out there that are going to create a moment of delight when you take them from the other side of like, oh, this was there the whole time. Like, that's really cool. And also knowing that someone might stumble on that and get further in the game all of a sudden, that's really cool that they have that in there. And I hope if and when I do find it from the original side, it doesn't break the game or cause problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, this game is great. I'm very, very happy with it. And nary a roguelike element to be found.
How prominent is combat in it?
Very. I think there's rarely you'll come across like a room or two that doesn't have enemies in it. But most of the time what you're doing is fighting. It's got kind of a Dark Souls feel to it where you're locking onto an enemy, and trying to manage the group's attention, and calculate like when is the right time to swing. But even then, like the way you do combat is tied into how much of the game's mechanics you've uncovered via the instruction manual or via your own experimentation. And it's this great feeling of like you'll find a new page and be like, oh, this is a way I can approach combat. Not because you unlocked some arbitrary gate, but because now you have knowledge that you didn't have before. And that's really fun.
Nice.
And like the little like higher res drawings of all the enemies are in the instruction manual with little call out, just like I described, like call outs of what they do and how to approach them. It's fantastic.
Nice. No, this sounds amazing. You're playing it on Game Pass, like on PC?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I downloaded it. I'm playing it with a controller up on the big screen, but yeah, I'm playing it on PC. And it was a day and date release, I believe. On Game Pass, surprise release on Game Pass. Here's one fun thing about the combat is that when you lock on, the lock on camera is like at a slightly different angle. Like the angle changes very slightly. Mm-hmm. You can use that out of combat to peek around corners and like see chests that you couldn't see otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's just also cleverly put together, and the I don't even want to call it a mechanic, but this discovering the game manual in the game is just brilliant. Love it.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the main stuff I've been playing this week.
Cool. I've got one, and it's going to be quick. Mm-hmm. I streamed actually over the weekend a game called Iron Lung. This is the new game by David Szymanski, the developer of Dusk. And it owns. This is kind of a lo-fi horror game, as is the style. But the way that I described it, it's kind of like playing Kingsfield through a Game Boy camera.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of perspective, like the setup of this is you are piloting a submarine you're piloting a submarine through an ocean of blood on an alien moon. You are a convict who is kind of like getting a chance to earn your freedom by charting these resources at the bottom of this blood ocean. You're in a tiny submarine. You can walk around it, but like literally it's about the size of a walk-in closet. And because the submarine isn't made for this environment, because the pressure is too high, the front porthole is closed, so you can move. You can move forward and backward, and you can select your heading, but you can't actually see where you are going. Instead, you see your coordinates based on an X and Y, which you then have to match onto a chart to check and make sure that you're not like gonna careen into a wall based on where you're at. Your objective. Oh man, your objective.
Just you saying that makes me like claustrophobic.
Oh, it is incredibly claustrophobic and incredibly stressful. And you don't know if anything is out there hunting you in this blood/water. You're going to hear a lot of sounds and things like that. So when something is close, there's a proximity sensor to tell you if it's like to the north, south, east, or west. But that's it. No. If something is getting closer to you, or as something gets closer to you, it beeps a little bit faster. Your goal, there are like these points of interest for you to go and look at. If you want to, to see where you're going, your sub is equipped with a camera, but in order to use it, you have to walk to the back of the sub to take this picture and then wait a moment for it to develop, right? So you can use that for navigation, but you have to get to where you're going to, you have to get to the point laid out on the map, to get one of these like 10 points of interest or whatever. And it gives you a heading, and you need to take a picture of what it is, to see if it's resources. And of course, it's always something fucked up and alien looking, giant skeletons and stuff on the floor or what have you. But as you're going, not only are you like very tensely navigating, again, just by numbers and by proximity, through these very narrow channels in the seafloor, but also, you have no immediate visual feedback if something is close, and you have no idea if that sound that you are hearing is something that is just curious about you or something that will kill you. So this is a very
that is terrifying.
I know.
Do you only take pictures of the points of interest, or is there a way to get like out of the sub or dock with anything?
No, you can't dock with anything. You can't get out of the sub. You're welded inside of it.
Jesus.
You can take pictures, and that'll help you navigate it sometimes. I didn't find that especially useful outside of just making sure that the area in front of me was clear. But the way the points of interest are laid out are really it's done really well, because eventually you start learning to navigate by the coordinates. You can you just kind of get a sense for it and get a sense for your momentum and the demands that are being placed on you. They go up kind of at a rate that is commensurate with the amount of time that you spent in it and kind of how comfortable you are. Go ahead.
Is it like instant death if there's something like hunting you or something, or is there like a more stress mechanic of like your sub starts leaking or anything like that?
I'm not going to spoil anything.
All right.
You do have limited oxygen. Yeah. So it's a limited
game.
Time.
Oh man.
So it's a strange one to stream because there's not an awful lot to see, but there is the suspense of like, okay, I'm hearing this, awfully loud sound. I think it's coming from the right. Let me turn and then get to the back and snap the picture, and then we're just kind of like waiting with our breath held to see what's going to come up.
You should stream with the heart rate monitor.
Yeah.
Do you ever reach a point where you feel like I need to run away?
Yeah. That's.
Does that what does that look like when you can't see where you're running?
You say to yourself, well, I really hope that I'm pointed in a direction that is not a wall. is kind of how it goes. Because if you run into a wall, that's death. That's instant over. But like again, like I said, you as you're navigating, you get a sense of like, all right, as long as I stay below the 500 mark on the y-axis here, then I'll be fine, right? And okay, yeah, then you can just kind of watch that, and you just kind of get a sense, like which direction is going to be safe based on your heading. So if you panic and like the sense is like, okay, threat in front of me, I need to get away as fast as possible, you can kind of do that and be aware, at least in the near term, of how well you're doing, and then you can just kind of hope that another proximity sensor doesn't go off. Wait for the other one that is a danger to you to go away, and then check your charts and see where you ended up. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So you got 2 map-based games in a row, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. So I recommend this. I've nowhere near kind of described everything. Like, there are surprises to this. It's like a $6 game, and it's 2 hours. You can decide if that is worth it to you. I would venture to say yes, because it is unique, and because it is genuinely tense, and it is an excellent kind of demonstration that you can do more with less.
It's like, let's have Subnautica and strip away the exploration part. Let's just have the horror part.
Yeah.
Yeah. I dig it. I dig it quite a bit.
Oh, I think I need to sleep with the windows open tonight. I'm feeling too claustrophobic in my house now.
Just from hearing me describe it. Yeah. No, it's any questions about Iron Lung?
Nope.
When are you playing it on stream so I can make sure that I do not accidentally click
I already finished it. It was a one night game.
Oh, okay.
And then the next night I was not feeling that great, so I didn't do it. To preserve my voice, because I got to use my voice.
It's the moneymaker.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ben, how about you?
Yeah, I got a couple. I got one maybe that's optional to talk either now or in the news story, so we can decide that later, I guess. But I'll talk a little bit about Valheim. I've been playing that some more. I made my beautiful base number 2. I've kind of mastered the plains, which is the final biome. And by mastered, I mean I don't die all the time. I just there's actually so I linked a screenshot of my second base. I was really proud of the staircase that I built for it. Built on top of a giant pillar of stone. I think I mentioned I was going to do that last week. There's these giant animals that are in the last biome. You can tame them. So I tamed a couple of them. So even if there's something that's hard to kill in the biome, I just run back to my base and then my minions will kill them. So that's somewhat enjoyable. But I think the sad note is I've kind of reached the end of the line where I've upgraded all my armor and stuff to the highest levels. I built this base that's kind of cool. I'm not sure what else I want to do with the game in the short term. So
the only game left is finding a way to troll new people.
Well, yeah, but since we're playing on a server, there's not randos or anything.
Yeah,
so it's just trolling my friends, but I troll them anyway, so it's not any added value. So I don't know if I'm completely done with the game or not, but I think I'll probably take a break from it, and maybe if I think of a cool idea, then I might go back to it. I did spend some time on the Valheim subreddit to see what that was about, and that's pretty cool. There's a lot of people post interesting builds that they do. So it's kind of cool to see what other people are doing, and that kind of inspires ideas for what one might want to build. But yeah, still good. I mean, I had a great time playing it for the amount of time that I did, and I'm actually near one of the biomes. I think I mentioned this last time. There's a biome called the Misty something or other, Misty Realm or something, and there's literally nothing there. And I thought it was only the sea, and I thought it was the barrier, but there's actually land for the biome as well, and it literally looks like the moon. It's just rock and nothingness. So if they make an update where they fill out that biome, then I probably might jump back in since I'm near it and where I built my second base. But yeah, I think I might be taking a break from it in the short term for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, still thumbs up. It was good. It was a good experience.
What's your favorite like memory or encounter from it?
I just have positive feelings about not being one-shotted in biomes where I was once like instantly one-shotted and feeling sad and having to do like a naked corpse run to get my stuff back. Yeah, so like thinking about, oh yeah, I could go to the mountain and kill wolves, no problem. Whereas at one point in time, it was like, I got to run away from this wolf. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Like I need to jump to a spot where I can recover my body more easily. You're like making very desperate decisions at one point in time. Yeah, but thumbs up. Art style is amazing on this game. I do think it's good game design as well. Like, I mean, all the mechanics are kind of building towards like immersion of this like Nordic type lifestyle, and they're all like pretty unique as well. Like the eating system's really cool. I haven't seen anything quite like that in other games. I think that's like a pretty cool way to handle like health and stamina, albeit a little bit of like grindy and annoying at some points where it's like, all right, I need to like harvest a field of onions to get my stamina up, which is weird. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, thumbs up on that game. I have a couple others to talk about. One brand new game that I played that's not actually a new game, it's a super old game, is I played Titanfall 2 over the last week.
That game rules.
Yeah, I picked this up, I think, on last winter sale, but it just never got around to playing it. Yeah, the campaign's like pretty short. It was like a 6-hour campaign or so. So I was able to play it and beat it in a day, but it was really impressive, the single player game. Really good level design. I mean, it's by the same people who did like Modern Warfare 2. And it has like a lot of like similar touches on it where it's very, it's very very broken up into very distinct levels, and each level kind of has its own lesson or emotion it's trying to evoke in you. But yeah, and there's a couple, I won't go into specifics, but there's a couple like standout levels in the game too that are like really, really cool.
The factory. How good is that?
Yeah, that was cool. And then the research place is another cool one. Yeah, just like really, really cool moments in a game that just like just inspire awe when you play them for the first time, where it's like, wow, I didn't know a game could do this. So huge compliments there. The combat itself is like, it's okay. It's not bad. Like the running and like, sorry, I should back that up. There's two different types of combat in the game. There's you as a pilot with like, it's like an FPS very similar to Modern Warfare. You're shooting people with guns. The only difference is you can kind of parkour and wall run, and that's it itself is a very dominant mechanic in the game of like traversing around the environment. And then there's combat as a Titan, which is much more like slow and clunky, where it's like you just point at another big thing and just shoot at it until it dies. There's maybe a little bit more complicated than that. There's like shields and like power moves and stuff like that, and giant like moves once you hit enough people that you can like unleash. But you can tell that like some of the areas are just like their attention is probably on the multiplayer play of like how people are fighting one another, and all right, we'll just like throw in 6 Titans in this area and you can just fight one another. And hopefully we've done a good enough job in the multiplayer that this part's fun. And those are like, okay, but they kind of hit or miss depending upon the section. And I think that was probably something in Modern Warfare 2 as well. There's a few levels where it's like, we're just going to throw you this area and throw like waves and waves of bad guys at you. And hopefully the combat is like fun enough to sustain like 10 minutes of like mowing through 100 enemies or something like that. And so there's some places where it's more entertaining and there's some places where it kind of falls a little bit flat. So that's kind of there as well. And there's a couple of things that are kind of campy too. Like, for example, all the bad guys, when they introduce, their name pops up on the screen. They jump out of their Titan and they have like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue.
That's too much.
Yeah. Like one of them's like a very German stereotype. His name is Richter. So like some of that kind of like snaps you out of the immersion of this like otherwise really cool like science fiction story. I had to look up the date when it came out because the first mission is your ship crash lands on a planet, and I was like, oh, this is Subnautica. And then I looked up and was like, oh, this came out a year or 2 before Subnautica. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's its own thing. But yeah, anyway, it's a short game. I just looked up on Steam. It's like, I think it's $7.50 for 6 hours. So make the same thing that you did, Cole, or it's like if that's worth your time, then go for it. The shooting itself and the guns, like they all feel very polished, and it just has like a really good feel to it. Like when you one shot someone with a shotgun, it feels very satisfying, and like when you just shoot someone long range down the scope, it's like you can tell like all the lessons they learned in the Modern Warfare games are put into this as well. Where it's a very very smooth experience. It's similar to like the Mario jump, but for FPSs.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it has the snap to it, and combining the shooting with the free running kind of stuff is really good.
And I think one mechanic they added in this is actually a big improvement to the Modern Warfare cloaking system, where you press the left bumper and you cloak for like 10 seconds or something, 5 or 10 seconds. If you shoot, you immediately come out of cloak. But it's a way that if you like get surrounded or something like that, where that would have just been like instant death in Modern Warfare, you can hit that and like run away and then in turn get the jump on this like group of people who had you surrounded. Yeah. I think that was a good quality of life improvement to the game. But yeah, I can't overstate, like the level design is really, really good. They do such a good job with like billboarding, like what you need to do. And like, I'll give an example. In the first level is like, so you have this crashed ship, you need to go get battery cores from this crashed ship. The crashed ship's like in a couple different pieces. So you need to go to a couple different places. Just like the billboarding of like, you walk around like in a horseshoe direction, but you can see the ship from each like region that you're in. It's getting like progressively closer. They just do it's similar to like Uncharted, like sort of game design as well, where they just do a really good job of like, what your mid and long-term objectives are at any given time. And it's just really well presented. So all of that is just very smooth. Anyway, I never played the first Titanfall, so I don't know if I'll go back and do that. Did they even have a single player to it, or?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
It's nowhere near as well regarded, but.
Oh, okay. Then maybe I'll skip that then. There's like, and then there's, I don't know. So overall it's good. I would, it's like B+ A- somewhere in there, I think. I would recommend it if you're looking for something new and maybe you missed it. I definitely enjoyed my time with it, but yeah. All right. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to do any overly critical things or anything like that. It was a good experience.
Yeah.
All right, and then I think I want to talk about this one now. I think instead of as the news stories, I want to talk about Storybook Brawl ever so briefly. It's kind of super hot button issue today. So just to say, like, what the news story is today, as the day of the recording, which is like Tuesday, they announced like at 10 or 11 o'clock that the company that made Storybook Brawl, Good Luck Games, got bought by a company called like XFS or something like that, which is like a crypto company.
FTX.
Yeah.
Company's called FTX. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the company is like looking to figure out how to put cryptocurrencies in video games and make that like a fun experience.
Is FTX stand for fuck this exchange?
That's what the players said. It was a bit of a tire fire. So like the announcements on their Discord, it's well over like 100 dislikes on the messages now. Like normally whenever they make an announcement, it's like, hey, a new patch is out. Usually it's just like happy emotes, thumbs up, puff puff, something like that. This was the first one where it's just like all negative emotes and just like just like a lot of like negative emotions from the players to the point where it's like I feel kind of bad because I didn't know like the player base had the toxicity that it's shown. Not saying that this is a good thing, but like people are like petty, man. People are like, so like the entire Discord is like, it's probably still going with like messages like of people like, I think as of like 10 or 15 minutes ago, let me find this image and paste it real quick. It's a picture. One of the art pieces in the game is Good Boy, which is like a dog that like buffs other people, and like people photoshopped it so it had like a picture of like the Yacht Club apes on the face of the Good Boy. So it's like
okay,
shit
that's
like
funny.
that.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, like that's funny and that's like creative. So I'm okay with criticisms like that. But then like there's others where like I don't know, just people being like really like kind of like butthurt and stuff like that, and just but not handling it in a respectful way, like trying to like somebody called LSV like a crypto bro or something like that. It's like you don't need to devolve to like name calling, you know what I mean? Like, but you can raise like valid points.
Yeah.
It's tough because they did something that is legitimately worth outrage and anger.
Yeah.
But that, on the internet, that's always going to be taken to the lowest form of expression of outrage and anger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, and to the credit of like the devs, like and LSV in particular was on like the Discord and answering people's questions. So like they were doing a good job of at least trying to communicate with people, but most of the communication was like, we don't know how crypto would be integrated with this game. We don't have any concrete plans. We're like exploring things of it, and like they were upfront with like, we're exploring both cosmetic and non-cosmetic options with it.
Oh God.
Yeah. But like another thing is they're saying like, we're going to put gameplay first. Like we don't want to devalue the game. Like even that we know that there's like crypto has a bad reputation. The thing is like, so I, like on the one hand, I want to reserve judgment to see like what they actually do with it and then kind of go from there. But on the other hand, it's like, come on, guys! Like the thing that I kept reminding me of is there was a brewery in Las Vegas when I was living out there that got bought out by like Coors, and it was Joseph James Brewery, in fact. And so they were saying they were very communicative at the time. They're like, "Hey, nothing's going to change. We're still going to make the same beers. They're just giving us funding so we can increase our scale if we want to, but we're still going to be in control of our beers." Like fast forward to like 5 or 6 years later, it's like, yeah, they're telling us we need to hit these quotas and put out this many beers like per year. So we have to do that. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I don't see how this isn't going to be the same sort of situation. And the big thing here is like, it's not that the company was given money for support for the game and then they could go off and do whatever they want to do to advance it. It's that the company was bought by this company and now they are owned by this like crypto company.
And
so
any support that you give is going to be going to a crypto concern. And if you have ethical problems with that, then
yeah. So
that's the thing. As a player, one, to want to continue to give time and money to something that, like you said, Cole, has ethical concerns, but also like even playing it right now and knowing like, okay, the effort I am going to invest to keep up with this game and know the latest meta and all this stuff, like eventually it's just going to get bulldozed by crypto.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be hugely demotivating.
Yeah. And so there are a bunch of people on Discord being like, I'm uninstalling the game. Like, if you guys, somehow like not associate with crypto, then I'll come back. But like, there's definitely people like that. The streamers that I saw today were trying to be more optimistic about things where they're talking about the thing that kind of muddies the waters is like the owner of this crypto company is like friends with the owner of the Good Luck Games. And so they're trying to say that like, oh, this is just like, middle school friends helping one another out, but it still like doesn't feel like that passes the smell test as far as why are you buying the company then instead of just like giving them funding if that's what you want to do.
Extend them a bridge loan, like
because that like I know like when The Witness got made got a loan from like game developer friends for like $5 million to finish the game, and it's like he didn't have to give up creative control to do something like that. So there's certainly like options like that have been done before. At the same time, I know like this is a free game, right? The devs like aren't making money from it. There's cosmetics you can pay for like optionally, and maybe that might keep them afloat. But like I understand that they need to monetize it in some way. Like it can't just be free forever. But this definitely feels like the wrong way to go about it. And then the other thing too is on Steam, it's been review bombed now, so it's like mixed review for the past like 30 days.
I'm conflicted about that. Like
the review bombing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I after reading the reviews though, like the actual reviews that people have left with the negative, like a lot of them, or at least the like the 3 or 4 that were promoted the highest, seem to be well spoken. Where they're like, "Hey, this is associated with a crypto company. I can't like recommend people play this."
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, now the reviews have changed to mostly negative now in the span of talking. So
life comes at you fast.
Yeah. So I feel bad for like the streamers of this game. I think most of all because it's like they're kind of live connected to the success of this game. So it's kind of, I mean, but it's like the game developers are also their livelihoods attached to this game too. So it's kind of like complicated.
I feel bad for their community managers, for their owners doing this to them.
Yeah.
Like maybe this is me being ignorant, but if your game is big enough that streamers are making their livelihood off of it, like you didn't need anyone to buy you to help you out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know like the internal like the company, right? And I don't know like how much. I don't know how many people are playing the game. I don't know if they need more people and they didn't have it. I don't know, like I don't know how much money they need, that sort of thing. So I can't really comment on that sort of thing. Yeah, it's just kind of a bummer. It just definitely kind of puts a sour taste in the mouth. So
yeah.
Anyway, so
Yuck.
I think for now, unfortunately, I am also one of the people uninstalled it for the time being. I'm not going to completely like write it off. Like I'll wait and see what they do with it, and maybe I'll like hop back on. But
it'll be interesting.
Yeah, kind of bummed out. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, should have done this story first, I guess, huh? And so we don't end on the bummer note. But here we are.
Oh well.
No, it's not the end of the episode though, so you were wise to pull it forward.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Multiplayer.
Now it is time for the multiplayer, where we ask you a question and then you answer it. Dennis, what is the question that you ask the nice people?
Yeah, I'm thinking about online interactions, especially with randos right now. So what is the coolest interaction you've had with a rando in an online game?
Yeah. And I'll get started with Jeremy, and we have a lot of these are going to be from Soulsborne games. Jeremy says, playing Dark Souls 3 was co-oping with a random guy in the Grand Archive, and at the end of the archive, there is an NPC fight against 3 NPCs, and we got invaded from another player at the same time. We managed to kill all 4 of them, and it was epic. So much fun co-oping Dark Souls 3. Yeah, that was the first one where they really made it into just a huge fracas whenever something like that happened.
Free for all.
Yeah. Let's see, Jala, what does Alex say?
Alex says, I was doing invasions for an NPC quest in Elden Ring, and 2 of the 3 devolved into dance parties with me, the host, and their 2 homies. Took me back to the Dark Souls 1 days when we do the same thing in the Ulasil Township. Crying emoji.
People get real goofy when you're in the world with them in Elden Ring. It's neat. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ben, what does Sean say?
Sean says, I think the most memorable moment is playing Journey and having another player join with me for the majority of the game and finishing the mountain climb with one another. I had no clue who they were, but it was great to share the very moving journey with them.
And hopefully they didn't have a name like Bong Killa, the Bong Killa _ the sex number.
Can you see their names in Journey? I forget.
In the credits, yeah. It'll say featuring.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
There really needs to be like a commitment at some point that like it's not that important for me to see the screen name in game in any meaningful way. Like, let me find it if I need to report someone.
Yeah.
But you give like a generic moniker. Games that have named characters that you play as, like your Overwatches and such, are the best, because then you can instantly what to call someone without having to worry about what crazy thing they chose.
Oh my gosh. Dennis, what does Greg say?
Greg says, first time I played World of Warcraft about 15 years ago, some high-level player noticed I was new and struggling to find my way around a town. Not only did he take me under his wing and show me the ropes, he took me around to all of the critical areas of the map under his protection and gave me a ton of his outgrown stuff from his bank. You can imagine as level 1 how much help that was. We talk now and then after that with more friendly banter and advice during the 3 years I played the game. But the few hours he spent with me on that first day, which were nothing to him, meant all the difference in my enjoyment of the game. I've tried to pay it forward in other games where I can.
Nice.
Man, that's cool. Yeah. People appointing themselves guides to new players, officially or unofficially, is always cool.
Yeah. It's always nice when people are generous. Callum writes, I got invaded in Bloodborne by the same person 5 times in a row in my first time in an area. On the 3rd time, instead of launching into combat, he gives a follow sign. I follow. He waits while I fight my way behind him, takes me to the elevator shortcut and waits for me to activate it, then bows and we fight. That was good of him to throw you that. As opposed to, doing a laugh emoji like LOL, LMAO. Yeah.
I got invaded by the same guy 5 times, and the jerk named his account Dennis to get my gun.
Dennis.
And then I realized that was just in the game.
Yeah, Armor Dennis. Yeah, that was just his name.
Oh goodness.
Jala, what does Curtis say?
Curtis says, I've told this story 100 times now, but back when I raided Siege of Orgrimmar with my brother's guild, I played a resto dude named Jarwani. One night, one of our tanks couldn't make it, so we found a tank on Reddit. He was a bit of a jerk, but mostly friendly, and nothing worth kicking him and trying to find another tank for. We got to Korkron Dark Shamans. There was a strategy for this boss where you pull one of the shamans into a building so the rest of the group doesn't have to deal with his mechanics. Ideally, the building team should just have a tank, a healer, and a DPS who can hold aggro just long enough for the tank to reset his stacks. The bulk of the damage comes from the other shaman, so that's where most of the healers should go. Resto druids were OP in Pandaria, so I got assigned to the building team alongside our rando tank. The fight went well, and we cleared it on our second or third try. After we finished, the first thing we hear on Ventrilo was the rando tank saying, Yo, Jarwani may be a little bitch, but at least he can heal his fucking ass off.
Jeez.
Get that embroidered in needlepoint. Hanging above your PC.
Excuse me,
Right?
sir. I'm right here. Oh my gosh, that's really good. Let's see, Ben. What does David say? Is this Moneysmith or is this another David?
I don't think so. No, this is another David.
Okay, all right.
We
The
do have many
Legion of
Davids.
Davids.
Yeah.
A. David says, I love my co-op interactions in Elden Ring. One time after helping them beat a boss, we both pulled out the prattling pate, your beautiful item, and at the same time did a curtsy, and then I went back to my game.
Prattling pates are these little like stones you can throw that will make a that will say a word. So it's kind of like doing an emote, but it says "You're beautiful," something like that.
Wasn't it like wooden idols or something in another one of the games?
Yeah. Those have been around for a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks. And then Dennis, what does Tyler say?
Yeah, he says, in my playthrough of Journey, I got paired with someone early on, and it was a blast playing with them. These are connected. With the only way to communicate in the game being jumping and chirping, you start to become attached to the people you play with. However, when we got partway into the bleak, snowy mountain, my partner dropped to their knees and faded into dust. They had disconnected. And wow, that game's disconnected animation is sad. I was legitimately upset that my partner had abandoned me right in the bleakest part of the game. I trudged through the rest of the level and made it to the final level, which, if anyone else has played Journey, knows is an incredibly joyous and beautiful cap to the experience. But the entire time I was just a little bummed that my co-op buddy wasn't there to experience it with me. And then the credits rolled, and it turns out I had actually played with 3 people over the course of the game and never noticed them swapping out. But hey, it made for a memorable, emotional experience in the moment. That's great.
Sounds pretty good.
It's less about what happens and more about the story that you make up.
Also, I really like prattling pate. I would have guessed pate as well.
Yeah.
So
nice. Yeah, I'll keep mine short. At one point, when I was playing Dark Souls 2, I needed to summon help for one of the DLC dragon fights, and got somebody, and their name was like Hamburger Chieftain or something like that. It was a fun username that was based on food. It was hamburger something or cheeseburger something. And so I made a post on Twitter because I thought the name was funny, saying to Hamburger Chieftain, thank you for helping me beat Sin, the poison dragon. That was neat. And then they replied, it's like, yeah, I'm a fan. That was you.
That's very good.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. Let's see, Jala, how about you?
So, in the original Guild Wars, my character's name was Jala Silverleaf. I happened across a male character who also had the same surname of Silverleaf, so I hung around him in the instance town for a little bit and chatted with him. And his avatar looked absolutely different than mine. He had like red hair and pale skin, and mine had white hair and like darker skin. But we ended up coming up with a whole backstory of having different mothers, not realizing that we had a sibling, growing up separately, and so on. And then we ended up running around doing a bunch of adventures together for a bit. I forget who the other dude was in the screenshot I just shared to you guys. I think it was just some guy that one of us was rolling around with doing stuff who just kind of came along for the ride. But anyway, it was just a lot of fun because like in Guild Wars that actually happened quite a bit. I ended up coming across a lot of people that I played games with for like years and years. So that was probably the most fun that I had interacting with people on the internet, was just random people I played with in Guild Wars.
Oh, that's fun.
And that game, like the structure of it is very conducive to random pickup groups.
It is, but it's also like, especially like later on when the game became older and then they put in NPCs that you can use in place of other teammates. So like you can have up to 8 characters and only be playing with like one other guy if you wanted to, because you could use the NPCs. And so like that required a lot more communication, not just like, you know, the random picking up one more guy to do the mission, but like, you know, just to navigate some of these areas with, you know, NPCs, because they were trying to make it more independent. So
yeah.
But yeah, we definitely played a lot of higher level areas too that I would have never played. I like to go around and explore and mess with my builds and stuff. But I did not have super exciting interest in like making the perfect build to go into the fissure of woe or something like that. But I've beaten those areas of the game just because, you know, I happened to roll up into a group that was doing that, and like somebody else had, you know, Googled it and was, you know, okay, this person does this, and you know, like all the surreal hyper strategy, you know, role assigning and stuff that goes into all of that. That's a lot more coordination than I was going to put into it, but I was fine rolling along with for, you know, the shits and giggles. So
nice. Yeah, I would not play an MMO because of the time commitment, but I do miss those those experiences. Finding you know, finding good randos. Yeah. Let's see, Ben, how about you?
I got a super immature example, but it was one of the times I was playing 3-on-3 in Rocket League. And so you have a picture by your name in Rocket League, and your scores, like when you check the scoreboard, you're sorted by how highest to lowest, like from top to bottom. And so the 3 people who were playing, their pictures were a picture of a hand, a picture of a shaft, and a picture of a cartoon head of a penis. And so and so what they were trying to do, the head of the penis was pointing upwards, so that person was trying to get in first place. And then once he got there, they all started spamming in position in chat, which is one of the pretty things that you can say. And then they proceeded to make it so that the second and third place person would try and switch places as frequently as possible. And yeah.
Oh my God, that is so good.
It was pretty impressive.
Oh, that is a great way to spend time. Oh gosh,
that's great.
And Dennis, not that you're gonna beat that, but
no, they were beating that. No, mine still has to be, even though it turned out crazy weird, playing City of Heroes, like the Legacy server on that. And rolling up a character that had like an undead backstory, and then randomly finding a roleplay guild that was like themed after undead. And that was like really cool. And just like the first couple of days of like meeting these people and just how serendipitous it all was super awesome. Then it turned into a sex group, and I wasn't really down for that. But.
I was going to say, Dennis, our stories have similar arcs, just on different time scales.
It's true.
That is really good.
Oh, there's poetry, the macrocosm and the microcosm.
Wheels within wheels.
Aren't we all just on a conveyor belt that leads to it's a sex joke?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But MMOs are great, just factories for those kind of interactions.
Nice. Oh, good question. Good anecdotes all. If you would like to participate, you can go to facebook.com/The Level Podcast and watch for the prompts to go up on Monday afternoons. Thank you, Dennis, for posting this one.
The end boss.
Now it is time for the end boss, where we talk about things that are happening in the world of video games around us that are exciting to us. Jala, what is happening with game preservationists?
So I don't know if this is exciting exactly, but okay, in the wake of the Nintendo announcement of closing the eShop for 3DS and Wii U, there's been a whole lot of talk of preservation of older games because so much of that content, particularly digital only titles and DLC, and even physical copies, since there's so much of a push towards digital distribution models and subscriptions, are becoming more and more accessible, at least legally, when the eShops close and the titles are not carried forward to the next generation of consoles. So institutions such as the nonprofit Video Game History Foundation and Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment are dedicated to the preservation of video game history by maintaining physical copies of older games and the hardware needed to play them, copying software onto hard drives, and also altering a game's source code so that games with online requirements can still be played after their authentication servers have gone offline. However, the point of games is interaction, so all of this preservation work, although it's important, becomes meaningless unless people can actually play those games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fight over access that's embroiled in a legal Cold War. A specific portion of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA, known as Section 1201, makes it unlawful to circumvent technological measures used to prevent unauthorized access to copyrighted works, including books, movies, videos, video games, and computer software. Due to this, the work of preservation is limited to an extremely small set of institutions because it leads to costly legal battles. And Section 1201 allows for preservation of video games not currently being sold, but limits that access to the preserving institution's physical location. So sharing these games for public access is not allowed unless the players come to the institution itself. So, really, it was more an article about how this is has been an ongoing conversation. And, the fact that there are definitely some various considerations that are making it hard to even do the work of preserving stuff without getting smacked with a lawsuit.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways you can emulate a lot of stuff, hack into, your hardware and do stuff like that. But, to try to attempt to do it the legal way is a whole nother matter, as part of the reason why I pulled my 3DS back up and have been kind of scouring through the eShops and things like that to figure out what I want to get. The Ace Attorney games were just recently on sale, so I picked up everything except for Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright, because that one is not on sale, but like the rest of them were like $5, and I was like, okay, perfect time. I will go ahead and grab those on my 3DS and get all of the DLC that I want and all of that for the one title that has DLC, and get that all squared away, because some of those are digital only. So And I, as much as emulation is, yes, it's free, and yes, it's right there and available to you on the computer, it's like, well, I want to support the creators who made the things that I like.
Right,
And
right.
also, you know, I'm not realistically going to be sitting there trying to,
No.
get my computer infected with something trying to get an emulation thing to work.
Yeah.
So
I'm really surprised that in all of the pissing and moaning about big tech, etc., that no politician has ever said, "Hey, the DMCA is dog shit, and we need to get rid of it."
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I've never met anybody who does not stand to. I just did like even creators just like they say like, yeah, this is terrible. This is not serving us at all. This is just a publisher's kind of benefit. Like it's really rough. I hate it. And as long as the law remains broken, then legal gray areas are going to have to be where actual work gets done.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, yeah, like that's where that's at. And I, for one, will be actually picking up some more 3DS games before that's not available.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, Julia in the Slack had posted some details that like sometime in May, they're not going to allow credit cards, like using credit cards to put money on your Nintendo account via a 3DS. But that balance does transfer over if you happen to have a Switch and you put the money on it using the Switch and everything. Like you can still use the money for the credit that way for a little bit until August. And, like that, it's a gradual shutdown process that they're working on.
Yeah.
But
sounds like we've come full circle to the place that Dennis was talking about at the beginning of the episode.
Oh my gosh. Nightmare.
Yeah, and it was a thing too. I was talking with Dave because he had a bunch of games digitally on his Vita, and his Vita broke, and he couldn't afford to buy another one before that store got shut down. So he just lost all of his digital content that he had. So, yeah,
I hate it. I don't have anything more eloquent than that to say.
Yeah. Somebody else talk about something else.
Yeah. Mine will be real short while we're talking about software and storefronts and, system firmware stuff. Nintendo finally added folders onto their interface so you can categorize your games in the Switch, which is nice. It is not precisely what I would want because you still have to go like a layer or two deep into the interface to see your groupings. Also, there's no way to filter by like what is uncategorized. So you have to, if you're making a list and you're looking at your big list of, potentially 100+ games on that, if you're trying to categorize things, there's no guarantee that you will have not just like accidentally double categorize something or like left something out. So like what I want is every game goes into one of these things, god damn it, or there's a way to see if it's already put into if it's already been put in. But that's more granularity than I could expect from Nintendo, who has never gotten their interface or like non-game stuff, system level stuff right at all ever.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it seems like a hard interface to try and do all that stuff in compared to like Steam or something where you have a keyboard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was just underwhelmed.
Even if they had like something workable, if they had an exact copy of Steam on theirs, but you still had to like go through typing with the controllers, that would still be like a headache and pretty hard to manage.
Yeah.
The second Nintendo's interface became not just the hole you shove cartridges into; they were kind of screwed.
kind of came up short a little bit. Consoles are hard. Dennis, what's happening with The Witcher besides them kind of announcing that there's a new Witcher game being developed?
I was going to use that for my story for the one-liner.
I see your new Witcher, and I raise you a story about the old Witcher. So, when games are allowed to be around a long time and are accessible to people, there are people that dig into them and find new cool things. As a streamer did, the streamer's name is X Latalis. with The Witcher Wild Hunt. They're a content creator that kind of does all sorts of interesting, quirky little things about this game and the way, you know, interactions happen in the world. And there's a particular quest where, you know, you get the choice at the end to remove a curse from someone, but the consequence is that someone will only live 7 years from that point. And you know, in theoretical terms, okay, that's the story, the monkey's paw, whatever, and you move on. But this person actually got curious, like, what happens to this person if I follow this NPC around for 7 years? Do they actually die? And so they, you know, they had been doing some stuff with like advancing time to check out other aspects of where she was at certain points, and realized that, hey, I'm kind of close enough that I'll use, you know, mods and whatever to speed things up, console commands, to skip forward 7 years of in-game time. And indeed, if you go find this person at the 7-year mark, you can see her suddenly pass away. So they actually put into the game the conclusion promised in this quest, versus just having it be a throwaway line or an interesting point. Like, you can see through this thing that happens, which is really cool. Like, that is a level of attention to detail that is very surprising.
And then they went even further and established that there is an end of time in the game.
Yes, there's a heat death of the universe, as it were, for The Witcher.
Oh my gosh!
Weird things happen. I guess, you know, basically the game starts what looks like glitching out, and it's unclear if it is truly glitching out or if there's something of meaning going on. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, the game continues to surprise and have interesting things, even as they are working on a new version of The Witcher.
Nice. That's a good quest too. That the curse quest there in Blood and Wine.
Yeah. They're very on point with The Witcher's themes of who's the monster and sacrifice and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's a good game. Also a good game is buttoning it up. How do you all feel about that?
I feel like buttons.
The credit.
This has been a long episode, so we'll keep this short. Thank you so much for listening to level number 407, I believe. I had a little bit of confusion naming the file. 407. We appreciate you taking the time. You know what to do. You've listened to podcasts before. You know how you can help us out. Reviews, ratings, Patreon, all that good stuff. And of course, coming back next week. Is there anything huge I am forgetting in my haste?
Don't think so.
No. Let's sleep.
I've been Kole Ross. You can follow me on Twitter at Kole Ross.
I've been Dennis Furia. You can find me on Twitter at Deck of Wonders with underscores between the words.
I'm Jala John in places.
I've been Ben Merkel.
And stick around for some titles.
I have two, and they're both real early episode titles, one of which I would say works for overall title.
Okay.
Specifically, Dudes, Am I Right? That would be the one.
Okay.
The other one is Generational Family Problem.
Okay. Dennis, how about you?
I've got just one, Prattle and Pate.
I was considering that, but then I was like, no, I like the other two better. So
let's see here. It does not honor my it needs to be prattling with an apostrophe. Ben, how about you?
I also just have one. I'm making sure this is a generational problem.
Okay. Making sure this is a generational problem. I have Bongkilla _, the sex number. And then I have in position. I think I agree with Jala. Dudes, Am I Right? Is a good one.
It's fitting. It kind of like wrapped around a few times.
Yeah. Any objections?
None here.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna go. Sleepy. Sure, we're all sleepy.
Yes.
Yep.
Take care.
I'm not sleepy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, you don't count. You're in
'cause of time.
you're in the early place.
Take care, everybody. Feel better, Jala.
Yeah, thank you.
Ben, if you're not sleepy, I'll stay on the call with you for a second.
Sure.
All right, later.
Okay, bye.